So my name is Deborah Jones. I've been part of the work group for the last year, working with AB86. I served as State Director of Adult Education at the California Department of Education for about 5 years, prior to transferring to the California Community Colleges, where I've been for the last 3 years, and for the last year working on adult education. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad that you are here today. We could have had twice as many people. There was such high interest out there. So thank you for being here. I am partnered with Neil Kelly today for a data presentation. Neil has been working behind the scenes, like I said, with Jillian Lufkin, Karen Baker, MIS. And we'll be talking about the different entities involved in the data. And what I'm going to give to you today is the purpose, the background of the data, the sources, the emerging trends. And this is from the data that you submitted the end of July, the gaps that have been identified, what the statewide data says, and Neil will be talking about that, the challenges that you've encountered, and the challenges we've encountered at the state level in looking at data. We'll be talking about next steps, and then we'll have a breakout exercise. I want to let you know that this entire conference is being live streamed. It will be recorded, and it will be posted on our website. All of the wonderful drawings will be posted on the website as well. So you don't have a need to take pictures. You can take notes, knowing that if you miss something today, you'll be able to go back and get it. So our purpose, we're going to provide in today's session a high-level roll-up of the AB86 Consortia plans that were submitted at the end of July. We received 69 of the 70. We are going to review emerging trends in the narrative. We're going to examine self-reported statewide enrollment numbers for 08, 09, 2012-13, and 2013-14. We're going to discuss the challenges discovered during the narrative and data table process, and we're going to lay out the next steps for the AB86 effort. Neil will then present the breakout session that we'll be doing. Data was collected from narratives and tables that were submitted by you. And we asked Hanover Research, and we have Janelle from, Allison Janelle from Hanover Research with us, and I've totally botched her name, I'm so sorry. They did the analysis of the narrative. They also looked at tables, and they summarized the major takeaways, and that's what we'll be presenting today. The AB86 office rolled up data tables to summarize enrollment by state fiscal year. We gathered census data that matched current regional needs to program area enrollment, and not all data tables were complete. Now, not all the data tables that you gave to us were complete, and not all the data tables that we used were complete. Thank you so much. So the emerging trends. Consortia expressed strong concern about creating and communicating educational pathways. This includes outreach to students, the development of new services, alignment, articulation, transition, and cooperation amongst Consortia members. We heard this too from our legislative panel. There was a need to adequately prepare students for work, coupled with the fact that many students are not currently seeking traditional higher education. It constitutes another primary area of concern. So teaching basic skills, technology skills, and soft skills to students as part of a contextualized education is a commonly suggested response to this need. And these are your responses to us. Closer involvement with employers also emerges as a common gap in this area. Many consortia cite a lack of professional educators necessary to achieve goals. We've talked about capacity and a lack of capacity over the years in being able to provide adult education. The report from Hanover often notes that there are simply not enough teachers and counselors to satisfy the demand for education in many consortia. Many reports mention specifically having an insufficient number of available counselors. We heard that again today. And students, teachers, counselors, and other staff also report encountering many personal and professional barriers and gaps. These barriers and gaps include, but they're not limited to, transportation, child care, literacy services, training, and the need for professional development. So this is familiar to you. I'm giving you back what you gave us, and there was a lot of consistency amongst each of the consortia. Insufficient personnel and insufficient classroom location and study areas. Almost all consortia reports that included specification of gaps noted a lack of specific and sufficient numbers of instructors, counselors, other staff, as well as a lack of sufficient classroom locations and study areas for student accessibilities. This was related to flexibility. This lack of counselors often correlated with other common gaps, including inadequate understanding of student needs by education entities, insufficient education and career guidance services available to students. And we as a work group have heard a lot from you about student support services. The lack of teaching personnel and locations frequently coincided with transportation, class scheduling, student enrollment, work, and child care responsibilities. Your response to us about that gap was the need for more distance and hybrid learning opportunities, combined with professional development and curricular development to support distance learning was mentioned by many of you. You noted these concerns frequently in the context of budgetary reductions and the implementation of a categorical flexibility in educational funding in California. Articulation, alignment, transition, and cooperation. These were common words from every single one of you. Relationships between providers involved in adult education are a common area of concern for you. You frequently identified issues of articulation, alignment, transition, and cooperation in various forms, including ensuring classes from one provider lined up with those of another in terms of content progression and prerequisites. So you want to know at the K-12 level when a student finishes that they're successful and ready for the work at the community college. Making class or semester schedules align with consortia members to minimize waiting times. We know that we lose students when there's a gap, when they're not able to access the pipeline and flow seamlessly from one system to another. Building bridges between educational provision and employers' needs. Matching what is needed from employers, those job-ready places for students to go was very important, that what students are learning today in their classes matches. You talked about reducing unjustified duplication of services. And you talked about being aware of service provision in other entities, so not just the school districts and the community college districts, but library literacy programs. And I know we have somebody here from the state library system, from the workforce investment boards, from the community-based organizations. And most of all, you talked about creating a unified and cohesive adult education system. And that's our charge. In some instances, members of a consortium appear to have little experience working directly with one another, and that's between systems. That suggests the need for a ground-up approach to create and cultivate relationships. Consortia cited the need not to lose students due to administrative differences and lack of interinstitutional knowledge. So when we bring two systems together, we have work to do just about processes and logistics. Similarly, you noted the need to consult with and involve employers for continuing and technical education apprenticeships related to education to labor market transitions. You also highlighted students' lack of information as a common gap. Associated with this gap, Consortia identified the need to have effective communication of educational pathways and available educational programs. So we in one institution may know what's available for a student, and somebody else in another institution may know, but the communication between those pathways is critically important. You mentioned having a lack of information regarding pathways for vocational ESL instruction and linking contextualized learning to workplace demands. The report from the consortia raised questions about how to track students, given different assessment and ranking systems and simple lack of data sharing. Furthermore, consortia addressed the inadequacies of existing assessments, and they cited the need to adopt common evaluation measures and education level intake assessments. I'm giving you a lot of information. It's what you gave to us. This will get posted. You'll have access to this information. Basic skills, workforce preparation skills, and soft skills were brought up often. In terms of advancing students towards college, independent living, and employment, you mentioned the need for more education in basic academic and life skills, work preparation skills, those soft skills, including pre-apprenticeship training. You talked about programs for time management, punctuality, those soft skill programs. And education in these areas appears to be a broad gap in provision, but particularly for disabled adults and those in the CTE programs. Technology education emerged as a common gap, both in the sense of not providing sufficient training with computers and not having enough technological devices. We don't have iPads, we don't have enough computers. We don't have tablets. Concerns about technology were also voiced in a slightly different manner. While many consortia expressed a desire for greater online or hybrid education options, some acknowledged that students may lack the means to access such offerings. This gap relates primarily to insufficient infrastructure concerns. So capacity, existing capacity, and the lack of capacity, the lack of infrastructure was a common theme. Consortia noted the need for both basic and advanced computer skills training for preparing students for employment. Professional development and curriculum innovation. Now this came up, but not as frequently, and I think that that's because it wasn't specifically the objective that was addressed in the July 31st reporting. But the need for teachers to receive ongoing and broad professional development in adult education appeared in several of the AB86 consortia plans and in several of the 5 areas. It was tied to the need to utilize more technology in teaching and to implement innovative or updated curricula relevant to modern career opportunities and social developments. A few consortia mentioned concerns around the need to align adult education with those of the Common Core. So we're not hearing too much about that. I expect that we'll hear more about that in October. And you had a lot to say about apprenticeship and CTE programs. Apprenticeship and CTE programs shared many similar gaps. Notably, many consortia indicated a total or near total absence of apprenticeship opportunities. I want to urge you, if you haven't seen the webinars on apprenticeship, to go back. They're posted on the website and look at those. John Dunn, who resides at the California Community College Chancellor's Office, is a great resource, and I know he's met with many of you and has gone to some of your meetings. You're free to contact him, please do. Consortia also regularly mentioned the need for English as a second language, CTE, and contextualized education in general as a means to promote connections to employment and to address the disconnect that students may perceive between what they learn now and later workforce application. You mentioned the need for deeper connections to local employers. And some of the responses that we heard from you was there are advisory groups with Perkins funding, there are advisory groups with the regional consortia funding and the sector navigators and deputy sector navigators. Many of you said you're tapping into some of these resources, and we encourage you to do that. And finally, you identified a gap in the provision of shorter-term stackable certificates that would enable faster responses to workplace demands and that are less immediately time-consuming than existing programs. So Neil Kelly's going to take us through the next few slides. There you go.
All right. In the interest of time, I'll quickly go through this, although it's very important. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people that worked on the data tables. I know it was, in some cases, almost an impossible task to complete those tables for all the years and all the information. But I think I've talked to every consortium in the state, and they did want to get it right. So we really appreciate all the hard work and effort you put into that. And so here's the results so far of all the time and effort you put in. So for basic skills, this is based on what you gave us. Now, whether this is every single student counted or not, but it just shows where we've been and where we are right now, and it kind of speaks for itself. Same thing with ESL. You look at the drop, and then if you go to adults with disability, not a similar drop, but there's still a decrease in services enrollment, and then finally, you look at CTE, also a huge drop off in CTE. And so what we're going to do today is right after this presentation, we're going to break out into super regions. So if you are in San Diego, you'll be with similar type regions from the San Diego area. Orange County, LA County will have 2 breakouts, but they'll all be from LA County. We'll have Inland Empire, we'll have San Joaquin Valley, we'll have the coast, we'll have South Bay area, we'll have Peninsula and East Bay, we'll have North Bay, and we'll have the far north and greater Sacramento. And so there'll be a name tag on your name tag, there'll be a room that you're supposed to go to. And what we want to do, there'll be further data explained. We've picked up some census data related to the 4 program areas. So, if you haven't graduated from high school and you're 18 to 64, or if you have less than a 9th grade education, we've teased some of these questions out of the census. Same thing with ESL. Do you speak English less than well? And there's some metro breakdowns for 18 to 64, and the census also has 5 and over, so it's a little difficult on the ESL. But it'll give you the magnitude of the need in the state. And we've broken that out by county and rolled it up into the super region, so you can see that really we're only meeting a small percentage of the need throughout the state. Even programs that were operating at 08, 09 levels and doing a good job still weren't meeting the entire need in their region. And so we'll give you a chance to look at that need, look at the enrollment figures, and we've rolled it up by that super region, and then you can get together and brainstorm about those gaps and strategies to close those gaps. And so really quickly, the challenges that we're looking at, we know the data tables are incomplete, and we know there's some discrepancy in uniform use of FTESs and ADA, but we're working through that. We understand that. We know the partners are a little not forthcoming with their financial data. Sometimes the enrollment data is not always there. It's not always there for the 3 years that we're asking. We'll be looking at the adults with disability definition. In some cases, it was a little broader than we thought. We have to narrow that scope. Looking at student enrollment and costs, a lot of times we didn't get the total cost for 13-14, and so we'll be following up on that as well to get more complete data. And also the issue of credit CTE. We're seeing some of the credit CTE wasn't counted, but a lot of that credit CTE you'll see at the adult schools, and the ones that offer CTE, you could see similar classes. So we have to explore that question. And then the apprenticeship data, just because the apprenticeship program is not offered in every part of the state, we did have some gaps there, and we acknowledge that. And then also the other challenges is looking at those statewide systems, the assessment, the accountability, the funding, the professional development and data collection and tracking, and we'll be getting into that as we get into the next phase of AB86. So our next steps for this effort, we're going to follow up with you on the data tables. We'll continue working with you on the next round of objectives. We'll begin to examine that gap between need and service, what we're doing today in this exercise, and we're further redefining or refining the strategies to close those gaps. And then when you get all your objective information together, we don't want 7 objectives and 5 program areas. We want you to braid all this information together for an adult ed system. So we don't want a separate response for ESL. We don't want a separate response for basic skills. We want to see how this adult ed system is going to work in your region. So somehow you have to take all that data and braid it into a cohesive, comprehensive system. And that's what we're looking for in the comprehensive regional plan. So I'll bring up Giselle to talk about the breakout exercise.
Thank you. So clearly the needs are great, and you've also received a lot of information this morning that you've received, right? And so now is the time for you to activate your thinking around what a lot of you are probably talking about and thinking about. So we are going to move into 2 breakout sessions. We won't be coming back to this main room until later in the afternoon when we take a look at what you've created and do a quick report out. So I'm going to actually give you instructions for both of the breakouts. There'll be a break in between, and you will need to switch from one group to another group. But hang on, I will go over all of that again. So let me direct you first to a handout in your folder that should have an image on it that looks like that with the bridge. If you don't have one, raise your hand and somebody will get one for you. So, in your rooms, as Neil indicated, there will be regional data broken up by region. That will be in your breakout rooms. If you look at your name tag, there are 3 words. The first one is the name of the breakout room that you will be in first. That is your geographic region. Okay? I'll tell you, we'll do some wayfinding work with you in a minute. So the desired outcome for this exercise is to use the regional data as a tool to assess the current context, determine where you want to move to, where you want to go, and then, as you see where the bridge is in that space underneath, how do you create strategies to bridge those 2 sides? Okay? There's also a space for you to write down any challenges that you might face or that you anticipate will be difficult to navigate as you develop these strategies or implement some of these strategies. Okay? And also, everything that I'm saying to you right now, I'm paraphrasing from this handout. So if you're not catching it all right now, don't worry. You can take a closer look at this when you get to your breakout room, and it will help you. Okay? So the templates are posted in your rooms. First, get settled. You will need to select a timekeeper and a recorder, right? So someone who is going to write on the walls. In some of the spaces, there's a chair rail in the room. So folks who are on the taller side, you're going to be a hot commodity in your breakout group. So you may be asked to do a little scribing, okay? So take a look at the template. If you'll notice on the left where it says current context, that's where you should start. So there's a number 1 there. Strengths, problems, and opportunities. And then move to where you want to be, and then you can start to fill in the gaps. Once you get a little bit of it filled in, you can start jumping around. You don't have to feel the need to fill all of one section, then move all of one section. The idea is to generate sort of that cross-thinking that happens when you get lots of people in a room generating thinking together. Okay? So, additional to that, if there is something that comes to you that you would like the working group to know that is not included in this template or within these categories, keep on the side a flip chart and you can title it. It says right here, what else do you want the working group to know? Just right at the top, a little line. Questions, comments, concerns, issues, anything else that you want to track, and we will collect those as well and bring those with you. Okay, so we will be collecting those as well, and that will be sort of part of the documentation from this meeting that we have. Okay? There are some ideas here at the bottom if you get stuck in your thinking, things you can do within the group. Also, working group members will be in the groups. They will be primarily observing and listening, okay, but they will also be there to get a sense of your process in the conversation. So they will be present in the rooms as well. Okay? So that is the first one, which is the data template. Okay? So that will take us to about 2:15. Okay? And then we will take a break. Again, this is all written on this handout. And then you will move into the next template and into your second group. So now, if you look at your name tag again, there is a second word in the middle, right? And that is the location of your second breakout. Okay? So there will be a break, and there'll be time to transition to your second breakout. And the second breakout, you will be mixed. So you are no longer in your geographic regions. You are completely randomly mixed. And you will be working on developing a statewide funding model. So putting your best thinking forward about what that could be. Okay? So if you take a look at the template, there's a spot on top for success factors. What are the factors that need to be in place for the model to be successful, right? What needs to be happening, right, in that ecosystem. Circles for ways to assess and track accountability. So one idea per circle. You don't need to fill them all. That's okay. If you want to sequence them, that's fine. You don't need to. Okay. Values and principles. So what are the criteria you're using to create this model? What are those underlying principles, values? Is it access, equity, right? What are you thinking about in creating this model? And also on the side, again, a place for potential challenges. That middle section where it says build your model, What I really mean by that is there will be 3x5 yellow stickies in the rooms, and actually physically write what will happen when on those sticky notes and put them on the paper. The reason I encourage you to use sticky notes and not write directly on the paper is if you find that you want to sequence it or you want to change something out or swap it out, you can do that easily. Okay, so use the sticky notes to actually build the model. Will you have a completely bulletproof, amazing model at the end of 50 minutes? No, probably not, right? But what you will have is the start of a really generative conversation, and know also that whatever you have to offer is the right thing in this conversation, and that you will be bringing your template back to this room and will be looking at them as a whole, okay, which will give rise to other insights, okay? So please don't put yourself under pressure to create something that is perfect, right, because that's not going to happen. So it really is your collective best thinking for today, okay? So that's your second template. That will bring us to the end, closer to the end of the afternoon. And then I'll let you read on the back. There are some other notes and logistics, but at about 3:25, take down the template, the funding template. We will have collected the other ones before that. You will not have even noticed. We'll just take them away and post them here. Bring them back here to this room. We will post them. We will have a gallery walk where you will see everyone's work. And then there's another handout in there. I know you're drowning in handouts, but there will be another little half pager that tells you about how to structure the report out section. Okay, so don't necessarily worry about that now, but know that that's coming, that someone in your group will be asked to speak to the funding model. Okay, so 2 breakout groups, 2 different groups. Find the names on your name tag. A break in between, which gives you a little break and time to move to your new space, okay? And use the handouts to guide your thinking, okay? If you have any questions, Paul and I will be floating around, and I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything before I just do.
Reference to them if they don't know where their breakout room is.
Oh, yes, thank you.